because we got two big movies to talk about. Maybe you've heard of them. Spider-Man No Way Home. It's already grossed $1 billion worldwide, so chances are you saw that. So we will dive into that first. We're also going to be talking about The Matrix Resurrections, which is now in theaters and streaming on HBO Max. Note, because I know I'm going to be answering this question quite a few times. I've already answered it twice. The Matrix Resurrections is the last day and date release for Warner Brothers / HBO Max. That was an only 2021 exclusive thing. And I think going back after looking at the box office receipts of things like The Matrix Resurrections and Many Saints of Newark, I think that HBO Max kind of wishes they would have pulled the plug on it around the summertime, but they weren't going to do it. They toughed it out, and I admire them for that.
Yeah.
King Richard's another one, too. King Richard's another one that bombed pretty hard,
Yeah.
I think, partially because of HBO Max. But Matrix Resurrections is the last movie that's coming to HBO Max while it is still in theaters. So that's not going to be a thing anymore next year, which is kind of depressing in a way, but it's also a silver lining in some sense. But like the convenience element of that could not be understated. I didn't watch every release on HBO Max. There's some movies that I did elect to go to the theaters and watch instead of watching them, like Dune and In the Heights. There was some I just wasn't going to watch on a TV screen, but most of which I did. And I am going to miss that guiltily.
Yeah.
But we'll move forward. We'll talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. And there is a lot to unpack. I like what Dominic called it when I messaged you guys the box office numbers opening weekend. I like what Dom called it, a big win for Big Nerd. So, yes, this thing is a titan. And it is a really nice Christmas present at the end of the day. It's a present not only for this time of year, but it's a present for Marvel fans. It's a present for Spider-Man fans. And I think I speak for all three of us at the very least when I say we are very big Spider-Man fans. And I've said time and time again that Spider-Man is my favorite hero. Spider-Man is one of those characters that even if they were to make another franchise, which ask again in 10 years or so, like I'll watch it. I'll follow Spider-Man off a cliff. I'll follow Spider-Man off a cliff, and I know Joe will too, at least. But Spider-Man No Way Home, hugely anticipated, largely teased more than any Marvel movie, even Endgame, because we all knew it was building to Endgame, but No Way Home, they were super conservative with the way they rolled this out. And I think we can flirt with spoiler territory now, because at looking even at the numbers too, just how much money this movie's made, so many people have number one saw it, and number two, like it's also the drops it's experiencing week to week, at least the last couple of weeks, suggest that it was very front loaded in that respect. So I think we don't have to be overly cautious with spoilers. We're not reviewing it the night of.
Let me say number 3. Yeah, if you haven't seen this movie yet and you're watching our review show, like what the hell's wrong with you? Like if you're waiting, like, no, I gotta know how Sleepless thinks about No Way Home before I see it.
It's true. I admire the dedication.
Yeah, no, thank you, but like.
I'll say this. I'll start off with this. This movie gives us a lot of warm fuzzies as a Spider-Man fan. And this is also a movie, too, that begs that you check your cynicism at the door. And if you haven't done that, it'll make sure you disregard it very shortly after it begins.
Yeah.
You can be as guarded, I feel like, as you want to be with this thing, unless you're David Ehrlich, free smoke. But you can be as guarded as you want and cynical about this thing as you want, but it's very, very hard not to smile throughout the bulk of this movie. And I'm going to start with that. Joe, let's go to you. Thoughts on No Way Home?
Just coming right off of that. Look, if you're like me, Dom, and Steve, you grew up in the early 2000s, and Tobey Maguire was your Spider-Man. And then when you went to high school, Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man. Maybe he wasn't your Spider-Man, maybe he was, depending on who you are, but that was Spider-Man. And then college years, you had Tom Holland. So we had 3 different eras in a very short span of our lifetime of different Spider-Man, different villains all coming in and everything, different interpretations, different ways the actors played them. Tom Holland, for me, is a personal favorite as of now. We'll see what the future brings, if he continues playing the role or if he steps aside. We even have an animated, like not this direct-to-video stuff now, but a full-length feature film theatrical movie animated franchise coming now with Miles Morales being the main character. It's just the history of Spider-Man in cinema has always been there. And I've been such a big fan of it, like Steve said. And yeah, this movie is just a treat. From who shows up to the callbacks to the little Easter eggs. I know, like, I wasn't here for the Ghostbusters review, but like the way the Ghostbusters handled those Easter eggs and everything, it was just like, see, it's here. Okay, we're gonna put it down now. And here's another one. The way, and don't get me wrong, No Way Home does the same thing, but it's actually used for the plot. The way characters are brought into the movie is used for the plot. The way certain like plot devices are brought into the movie are used for the plot. Not everything is, but the major stuff is brought in for the plot, for the character to develop. For Peter Parker to develop and everything. It's all there, and it's there to actually help with the story, help actually entertain you, not just be like, isn't it cool that we brought back the juice from the Ghostbusters back in the 80s? Isn't that sick? Anyways, next joke. No, it's not like that here at all. This movie is very, the pacing of this too. It is like this. It's at breakneck speed. For a 2-hour and 30-minute movie, it flew by for me. I didn't feel the pacing at all. I didn't feel its length. It flew by, especially when you get to the second half of this movie. I honestly had a blast with it, and I'll go into my criticisms later, of course, but like for now, I want to praise it even more. I'll pass it off to Dom if you're good to go. I know your mic's muted right now.
No, yeah, it's we did it. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. No, but like, obviously we three had such a huge help in the production of this movie. No, the fact that like we were able to bring together 7 movies for the same dude, right? This isn't even like an Avengers situation where it's like, okay, we can take a break from Captain America. Now we're going to focus on Thor. No, this is the same Peter frickin' Parker that we've hung around with for like a decade now. Different Peter Parkers, but obviously, but still the same guy. How the hell do you do this? And it's not even like Batman, where it's like, okay, here's Nolan's, now we get new Batman. Here's a new Batman. Or different interpretation. This is the same pretty much story again and again, right? Even this trilogy of movies winds up being a wackadoo origin story for status quo Peter Parker. We've essentially done the same 3 things now, 3 times, but somehow we have knocked it completely out of the park. And it's a testament to the writers of this trilogy, of Watts, and of course Kevin Feige. I know everyone likes to heap praise on Feige, kind of like how everyone heaps praise on Jordan Peele. But then we forget, like, oh, you're right, he didn't direct Candyman.
Yeah.
But in this case, you got to give it to Feige as well. That they have managed to come together and accomplish something that the box office likes, critics like, nerds are fighting over each other for tickets for, which is stupid.
And
but
NFTs.
That's just what nerds are. Yeah. Whatever. But it's really just a testament, because in so many other scenarios, in so many other infinite timelines, this could have been a major freaking disaster.
No, it could have. Yeah.
You asked me if like they were trying to do this, like, okay, we're gonna try and bring together Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man in their own movie. This is before Tom Holland gets his thing here. It's like, this is gonna be a disaster. Now in a post-Endgame world, it's like they might actually be able to do it, and by God, they did.
It took 2 strikes. We had Spider-Man 3 where there was multiple villains and multiple storylines, and that kind of fell apart. Then we had the Amazing Spider-Man 2 with the same thing, and they're like, no, we got it. This third time, we're definitely gonna get it. And
on paper, this sounds like an unmitigated disaster.
Oh yeah.
I'm very curious. I am very curious to see how someone who hasn't seen the other 2 versions of Spider-Man are seeing this. And I'd really love to freaking see someone's take on, hey, I've never seen a Spider-Man movie. I'm just walking into this one. It's like, I don't even know if that's valid. If any criticisms you have, well, maybe not. I'll never say that. I shouldn't say that because you can still see a bad movie when you see a bad movie. Yeah. But it's like the fact that this movie kind of sort of necessitates that you watch the other 6 other, or 7 to kind of quote unquote fully get it. I think that kind of helps it, right? You have the Sinister 5, but it's like we don't need necessarily origin stories for each of them because we've already done that over 2 decades of movies.
Yeah.
However, even then, they still kind of, obviously there's importance, but they give the important villains their kind of origin to a degree. Not origin, but just in a singular, isolated movie plot. Hey, here's what this character is.
Yeah.
Here's what their problems are.
They hit those bullet points that just we need to cross off, and you get the character, and you have a great actor performing them, like Dafoe, Molina, and even Fox to an extent. Like, they're really like, they could be like, hey, just give me the script, I could take it from here.
Yeah,
exactly. So these are some of the most iconic characters these guys have ever played. I didn't mean to cut you off there, D. But yeah, these are some of the most iconic characters these guys have ever played too. You know what I mean? So it's kind of just like slipping back into, reacquainting with an old friend in so many ways too. I think it's interesting too. And it goes to show you that people just didn't hate Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi's movie, out of spite, is the fact that, like, Marvel has always long had, not every movie, but many movies, a villain problem. There's been many think pieces written about it, the underwhelming nature of Marvel villains. And they've had difficulty making their villains as interesting or even as remotely compelling as their heroes, really since the dawn of this cinematic universe. But what should be the ultimate sin here is actually one of his greatest strengths, in that we get a handful of villains here. We get a handful of villains, from Doc Ock, played by Alfred Molina, Electro, played by Jamie Foxx, and then you get Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. And on top of all that, too, you're also trying to incorporate Doctor Strange, and Benedict Cumberbatch over here. And you're incorporating Maguire, Garfield, and Holland Spider-Man. This movie is so stuffed, but it is carefully handled in the way that it not only introduces these characters, but it gives everybody, for the most part, everybody gets room to breathe. When we address criticisms, there's really only one criticism I have with this, but everybody gets their screen time. They don't all come on scene at once, and then it's a Suicide Squad battle of whose line is it anyway.
Yeah.
That's not what this movie is. They're treated very delicately, and they're treated with backstory, which makes this even more compelling.
My hat goes off. I mean, I know, like, Don mentioned his name earlier. Yeah, of course, Kevin Feige, but man, John Watts, dude, what a trilogy you managed to pull off, man. I love Homecoming, and I still think it is my favorite, like, live action Spider-Man to this day. But this, I mean, like, this is such a great conclusion to the trilogy you set up. Like, I thought Far From Home was fine. I liked it a lot, and I was like, okay, this is cool. And then that cliffhanger, I was like, well, shit, this next one's going to be amazing. And long and behold, it practically lived up to every expectation I had. Watts, man, I don't know how you did it. You managed to balance, as Steve was saying, the legacy of the characters coming in, another MCU character like Doctor Strange, and then Peter, along with Peter's own personal bubble of characters like Aunt May, MJ, and Ned. And, like, also, just real quick too, hats off to Tom Holland, where I know it's like, oh, like, like, he's great as Spider-Man. No, like, to me, like, this was his best performance as Spider-Man. I think this is the best performance we've gotten from someone playing Peter Parker out of all these movies. Like, seeing Tom Holland's, like, struggle of, like, I really just want my friends and my family to be okay. I really don't care about me. Like, my identity could be exposed, whatever, fine. But the fact that everybody else around me is getting affected by that, they don't deserve that. That is so Spider-Man to the highest degree. And Holland just nails it, like, perfectly. His compassion he has, the high schooler aspect of him being naive and kind of dumb. But then, of course, like, I won't get into spoilers here, but the turnaround of him learning, yes, the responsibility of being a hero by the end of this movie, like, where he's at, is like, dude, yeah, no, this is the Spider-Man that we all know and love, of him just transitioning into that adult Peter Parker.
Beyond the cheers and claps this movie elicited when it introduced classic characters and reintroduced them and did something with them.
Yeah.
This movie ultimately, in my eyes, is Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and it's kind of poignant whether or not this is going to be his last one. This is Tom Holland's Spider-Man, in so many words, rising out of the shadow of Tony Stark and earning his place as an A-list Avenger. That's what this movie is, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's him rising above, because the last two movies, there's been subtle maturation. Because I've liked all of these movies, even Far From Home. There's a lot. I mean, Far From Home, I think, is the de facto weakest of the trilogy, but I like Far From Home quite a bit. I
haven't seen Far From Home. I've seen 1 and 3 in this one.
Oh, damn.
Oh, you missed Far From Home. But moreover, though, with Far From Home, though, in Homecoming, is at Homecoming, it was interesting. We almost hadn't seen a movie like this, a superhero movie, at least modern wise, where and it was realistic in the way that Peter Parker gets his powers, becomes Spider-Man, and he's crashing into everything. He has no idea how to handle his own. He's a danger. He's like a public menace.
It's literally like giving a car to a teenager. Like that's how I describe Homecoming. It is
giving
like
a Lamborghini to a teenager.
Which he drives in that movie, actually, when he steals Flash's car.
Which he does drive. But but that was the thing about Homecoming that made it great. It not only took a John Hughes template, it's not a secret, it's been out for years. It took a John Hughes template, like a rom-com Brat Pack template, and made it a superhero movie, retrofitted it kind of to fit a superhero premise and a template in itself. Yeah. But you saw, like, Parker was not fit for those powers in the original movie in Homecoming. He wasn't. And it made damn clear of that. He almost gets himself killed at least a handful of times at the Washington Monument, and then Far From Home, he's learning, but he's still in the shadow of Tony Stark. Tony Stark still has to check him on a handful of occasions. He's getting a little bit better, but he's still not there. And then here, it's the emotional maturity that he shows. When the truth is out that he's Spider-Man, and his first concern is Aunt May, his first concern is MJ, his first concern is Ned, and then he becomes crushed when he starts seeing that they all get denied entry into MIT. Mm-hmm. So what I'm getting at, though,
May's forced to leave her apartment because people just keep attacking it, like, with bricks and stuff.
Exactly. And what I'm getting at here, I'll throw it over to you again, Dom, is that the cut and dry of this too is that the movie, it's not a casting gimmick. The characters it reintroduces, Doc Ock, Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, Maguire and Garfield. It's not a casting gimmick. They actually play with these chess pieces quite a bit. But because this movie is so fixated on the emotional maturation of Peter Parker as Spider-Man and Peter Parker as a man, it earns every emotional beat that it commands, that it demands from you. It earns every emotional beat. It feels authentic because it's so expertly handled. I got to tip my cap once again. The writers here, Chris McKenna, Eric Somers, obviously Kevin Feige, and John Watts too, John Watts, I remember watching his movie Cop Car with Kevin Bacon back in 2015. Great film if you haven't seen it. Movie. Great film. But just a low-key, moody indie movie. And never would I have even imagined he pulled something off, not out of ability, just out of, I'm thinking he's going to be a Mike Mills guy and just stick with like low key dramas and stuff. And he jumps to this and he bodies it. He just absolutely bodies it. Dom, anything more to add to?
It's really just cool to say. We could obviously gush over this for the next 2 hours, but really the things that make Spider-Man, yeah, it's not the web slinging, it's not the fighting, it's not the quippy one-liners, elements, sure, but not the heart of it. The heart of it is when he is, this is hardly a secret, but it's the perseverance. He can be in the absolute worst state possible. In the first, in Homecoming, right? It's when he's under the rocks. And yes, that's an iconic moment in the comics where he's pushing the rocks and crying through it all in deep pain. That's who Spider-Man really is at the end of the day. And the fact that this, this has proven that, hey, he's willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for his loved ones and persevere through it. Okay, that's what we got. And the fact that they're able to balance that too with the villains. Like, Watts was smart. The writers were smart here. They know, okay, we know who the big draws are in terms of the villains. No one really cares that much about Lizard and Sandman. So, they get less screen time. Fox kind of in the middle because he was eccentric and electric. And say, okay, Molina and Defoe, that's who people came to freaking see. And he gave it to him, man. Molina's the first one you see, and then Defoe.
Dude, he looks
Defoe
good.
steals the show out of the villains, man.
Hasn't aged a freaking day. Since the 80s. Like, I don't know if you've seen some pictures of him where he's hot in the 80s. I mean, he's hot now, let's be honest. But like, seriously, when he's in like leather jackets and black and white photos in the 1980s, damn Defoe.
Both Defoe and Molina. They both, I mean, even Molina, I think, looks good too. Molina doesn't look his age either.
Hardly even a bold statement, but Defoe's Goblin here is probably better than what 80% of MCU's entire villains roster. Some I can't even name other than that color dude. The pacing here is really, really fun. And it's kind of like the perfect Spider-Man movie of this brand. The animated ones that Sony also has on its hands is kind of a whole different brand altogether.
Yeah.
That you can compare the two, but it's almost unfair to try and pit the two together, the two types, right? Live action and then animated, and not because of the style, but more so just how they handle themselves. In fact, actually, these two are now getting very dimensional, multiverse Spider-Men, so it's kind of a similarity in that sense. But yeah, everyone's here firing in all cylinders. The two other Spider-Men, Maguire and Garfield, not much there to say other than that they bring 110%. I was worried that Maguire might be like just completely blasé because it was
good, man.
Like I'm done with this shit. No, he was all in. Like I was worried at first because in his youth pastor look coming in the first minute, but then when he's like in the suit and he's doing it, like, dude, he's like screaming. He's doing his thing. That's just how Tobey Maguire acts, where it's like he looks dead. But
when he yelled at Tom Holland, when he's just like, "I'm part of the Avengers." Oh, that's great. What is it? He's like, "Well, it's this group of." How is this helping? I'm like, yeah, that's Tobey Maguire.
Did I ever mention how my mother ruined Tobey Maguire for me? Did I ever mention that?
No.
I'm serious. I'm serious. This is a sidebar here. Love you, Ma. This is funny. Because I watched Spider-Man a lot. The first two movies I watched a ton growing up on VHS. I had them both. My mother mentioned this to me when I was like 7-8 years old when we were watching Spider-Man, and I've never been able to unsee it. She's like, I don't like Tobey Maguire. He doesn't move his mouth much when he talks, and I can't unsee it. If you watch him, it's amazing that he's as loud as he can be, because like if you watch his lips do not move a ton. He's almost like he'd be an amazing. He'd give Jeff Dunham a run for his money in the ventriloquist department. I've always noticed that ever since every single Tobey Maguire movie, it's always the same.
That actually kind of works into my point, which is that Maguire as an actor, it goes from subtle to 1,000% really quick, and you never see it coming.
Yeah.
And it's impressive actually. Like I'm not, it's not even a bad thing. It's just impressive. But yeah, dude, everyone, and it true proves that all three of these actors really did have their own brand here. Yeah. It even speaks to how Tom Holland, like, oh yeah, hey, this trilogy of kids, they actually feel like high schoolers. As opposed to Maguire and Garfield, who were like, you guys could have been in like senior college already by now by your first movie, but whatever. That's not their fault.
Garfield,
are we gonna go into?
I was gonna say Garfield. Like as the Spider-Man that kind of got the less end of the stick, and everybody kind of like. When he was out there, everybody was like, yeah, he sucks as Spider-Man. I always said like he's good as Spider-Man. Not that great as Peter Parker. The movies themselves, though, that's up for debate. I don't like the first one. I like the second one more. But I thought even his return here, man. I mean, like, he comes in with all the enthusiasm he had of getting the role of Spider-Man because he loved it as a kid and he loved watching Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, and like him just coming in again and firing on all cylinders, as you're saying, Dom. Like, yeah, man, he was a treat to watch as well. Even getting his big redemption moment, which I won't ruin, but like I was like that actually made me smile really big.
It's kind of a dynasty here. Maguire's 46 now, Garfield's 38, a little on the higher end, and then Tom Holland is 25. Like,
when the hell did Andrew Garfield turn 38?
Right?
He does not look. He was a little older when he was playing a high schooler, but he stopped there.
Like,
just stop
if
there.
I'm Andrew Garfield, I'm wearing, you know how they always do those stupid, like, you know, always say, like, Andrew Garfield spotted getting a bagel at Einstein Brothers at 2:00 on a Sunday. You know what I mean? They always do that.
I wish I looked that good.
If I'm Andrew Garfield, I want to wear a shirt with the immortal Mike Jones quote on it. You might remember this from the song Back Then. I want Andrew Garfield to walk around in public now with a shirt that says, "When I was unknown, they didn't want me. Now I'm hot and they all on me." You know, I'm serious, man, because like it's funny that like, and you can blame our collective minds and how we get lost in the moment and stuff like this, but you know, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I did not hate either of them. I actually think I gave a positive review to the first one. That was back then. Things have changed. Who knows what I think of it now? The sequel's kind of a mess. I'll admit that. They weren't categorically awful movies, though. They just were not very well handled.
Yeah.
And anybody who was going to follow up Tobey Maguire for this generation was going to have an uphill battle no matter what. Director, writer, actor, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't want to be the person. Might be a stretch to call Tobey Maguire a legend, but at least in the superhero lore of this context, it is. You don't want to be the guy who follows the legend. You want to be the guy who is the guy who follows the guy who was the legend. You know what I mean? I don't mean to make another sports reference over here. You didn't want to be Jeremy Colleton of the Chicago Blackhawks following Coach Joel Quenneville. You want to be the guy who follows Jeremy Colleton
I get you.
after the 3 cups. Like, you don't want to succeed Bill Belichick with the Patriots. That's what I'm getting at here, okay, is that you don't want to follow a legend. And that's now, I think that time and the way he was treated in this sequel has got him more endeared, deservingly so.
Of all the romances Spider-Man has had on the big screen, I will say that Garfield
Stone.
and Stone,
Yeah.
Emma Stone's that chemistry is unmatched.
It is.
And
yeah.
it's funny now.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the memes, but like all the Spider-Man have dated their Mary Janes and Gwen Stacy's. But even then, it's funny because even Zendaya's chemistry with Holland, it's almost like it's of a different form.
Yeah.
At its core, it's the same, but it's so different enough from Kirsten Dunst and Maguire's chemistry that it kind of is of its own. So really, between Maguire and Garfield and their chemistry with their other Stone and Garfield take the cake. Those carried the movies for me of those two.
Can I just add too that, like, and I think that I'm glad to see she's gotten recognition. I feel, you know, she's always gotten, I don't want to make her seem like, you know, she's been a pariah of this series. She's been unsung or whatever, but like Zendaya is such a huge part of these movies too.
Oh yeah.
She's such a huge part, and she's not a damsel character either. She's so, like, even when she's not confident, she plays confident very well. Like she has this almost, I don't want to say a rigidity, but like she's got like the best possible opposite personality to like Peter Parker's sort of skittish,
energetic,
in some sense, personality, energetic.
Yeah.
She's got the dialed down energy that makes her so magnetic. And damn if Zendaya hasn't had a great year between this, and do not forget about Malcolm and Marie either.
Yeah.
Zendaya has had a hell of a year, and she's got many more great years as an actress and a performer in general. But she brings so much to these movies too, and I love to, even with all the mayhem in this movie and all the characters and the villains and the classic callbacks, they did not sideline her whatsoever.